Office, the Public Works Department, Cameron Graham, President, Development, Delivery, and Infrastructure at DART, and Mr. Andrew Small, Senior Manager of Project Management at DART. In studio with us, we have the Chief of the Fire Services in the Cayman Islands, Mr. Paul Walker, members of the media, as well as invited guests. We're going to begin today with a statement from Chief Walker.
Good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity to provide an update on the fire from the landfill. As I said in my written press briefing this morning, I'm immensely proud of my colleagues from Cayman Islands Fire Service who have worked tirelessly through the night with colleagues from DEH to prevent flare-ups and cover deep-seated seats of fire within the area. As I said yesterday, we promised to fully extinguish the fire, and our crews remain on scene today with DEH colleagues excavating. As you understand, it's quite large mounds of waste. We have some deep-seated pockets of fire, and we will remain until we're quite convinced that there's minimal chance of any reignition. As I said, yet too early to speculate on the cause of the fire, but as with all fires, we will be investigating the cause. And as far as we're concerned, it's been a really great job with partner agencies to minimise the impact of that fire on surrounding residents and businesses.
Thank you very much, Chief Walker. We go now to our Honourable Premier, Mr. Alden McLaughlin.
Donna, perhaps if members of the media have any questions for Chief Walker, because we'll be here a little while, if they could deal with those first before we go into the contract.
Sure. Norma, April, Wendy, any questions for Chief Walker?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for tuning in. 7 years after my first administration commenced work to find a comprehensive and sustainable solution to manage Cayman's solid waste, I am most pleased today to announce the signing of a 25-year contract between the Cayman Islands government and DART to design, build, finance, maintain, and operate a new integrated solid waste management system, and to complete the ongoing remediation of the Georgetown landfill. Pardon me. The signing concludes many years of complex collaboration to bring this project to reality. This signing today is truly historic. It is a national achievement for the Cayman Islands and the final step towards the delivery of a modern 21st century solid waste solution that will have tremendous benefits for the environment, our community, and future sustainable growth. Our people deserve to have the best option for waste management, and this option represents that. We cannot continue to handle waste in the manner in which it has been done over these decades. Not only is it not sustainable in terms of the risks we face at the current landfill, but we're also constrained by the lack of space there. The reality is that the current Georgetown landfill is nearing capacity, and the current site will only afford us at best an additional 5 years to continue the status quo. This signing also represents the Cayman Islands' first public-private partnership. This is in line with the recommendation in the outline business case completed back in 2016. The project has been led on the government side by the Ministry of Health, Environment, Culture and Housing, the Major Projects Office, and the Department of Environmental Health, who were supported by specialist technical consultants in waste management, legal, and financial matters. I wish to express my sincere thanks to the project team, led by the Acting Chief Officer, Ms. Nelly Pucci, Chief Project Manager, Mr. Peter Ranger, and Director of DEH, Mr. Richard Sims, for their extremely hard work and diligence in seeing this project through to the successful outcome today. My thanks also to the project team at DART for their committed collaboration and partnership on this project. And a very special thanks to the Minister for Health and Environment for persevering. The ISWIMS project itself is expected to take approximately 3.5 years to complete after the relevant permits and environmental impact assessment has been completed. Over the course of 2021, remediation of the main mound at Georgetown landfill will continue, with interim tipping operations transitioned to a new area of the landfill. The visual appearance of the site will also be enhanced with privacy screens. The EIA for the project will commence with the publishing of the terms of reference, which will soon be available for public consultation. Between 2022 and 2024, the new facilities will be constructed, and until the energy recovery facility is complete, waste will continue to be landfilled and remediation of the North Mound will be completed. At the end of such, and by 2024, the country can expect to have a modern, sustainable way of handling its waste, which will serve us for at least the next 25 years. As yesterday's unfortunate events demonstrated, there is no do-nothing option, and I want to show the public that this public-private partnership intends to deliver on our shared goal of providing a modern, sustainable solution to waste handling in these beloved Cayman Islands.
McLaughlin. We now go to Minister for Health and Environment, the Honourable Dwayne Seymour.
Thank you, Donna. Good afternoon, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today. We have been grappling with this problem of Mount Trashmore as a government and as a community for many, many years. Locally, the conversation surrounding our landfills, especially that of the Georgetown landfill, has been about finding solutions to a number of environmental and social issues, and of course to the view. However, the way the land is used after the landfill reaches its capacity is an important long-term consideration for the government and the communities surrounding them. The question, what should we do about Mount Trashmore? It has been a long and often complicated, highly technical conversations with our experts, but I can assure our people, it has all been guided by what is the best interest of the public. Many of you have been asking about the additional facilities in the Cayman Islands. The Cayman Islands will gain through this partnership. I will list them here and allow the technical experts to go into more detail later on. The 9 integrated facilities are as follows: the energy recovery, residual waste landfill, green waste processing, bottom ash processing, end-of-life vehicle and scrap metal recycling, household waste recycling, materials recovery, constructions and demolition waste processing, medical waste processing. Lastly, I wanted to answer the question of what are the policy accomplishments that we have achieved here today. We now have the Cayman Islands' first energy recovery facility, a complete transformational change to handling of waste in the Cayman Islands. This is all in line with the national waste hierarchy: reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, and dispose. As the Premier just mentioned, yesterday's fire is further evidence that we are in need of these types of solutions. It has been a privilege to work with everyone here and our technical experts on creating the government's first ever PPP deal. And I want to assure you again, this will deliver to our islands not only a modern, sustainable solution, but also to help push the entire country in our efforts to live greener and healthier lives. I am proud to be a part of the team who delivered this promise during my tenure as Minister of Environment. I want to thank the project team for all their hard work to reach this milestone. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you very much, Mr. Seymour. We now go to Mr. Cameron Graham, President of Development Delivery at
Yes, good afternoon. Today's signing represents a defining moment in Cayman's history, moving past decades of talk to action. In the country's first public-private partnership, we're delivering a sustainable solid waste solution. today kicks off a rigorous project timeline, including environmental impact assessment, engineering, design, permitting, procurement, and construction of the new facilities. For several years now, DART and the Cayman Islands government have been invested in finding a sustainable solution for solid waste and address the environmental challenges of the landfill. After years of work in collaboration with government to finalise the details of this multi-million-dollar, multi-decade project, we are proud to sign this contract today to deliver on the government's stated objectives for solid waste. I'd like to thank the government for their continued commitment to the project and recognise the Ministry of Environment, Department of Environmental Health, Department of Environment, Major Projects Office, and Government Information Services. Also CUC for their efforts and collaboration with us on this project. Similarly, on our side, dozens of people have worked diligently over many years. I want to say a special thank you to our team members at DART, our project partners, Island Recycling, and our many international specialists. As we celebrate this significant milestone, we're looking ahead to the next 3 years of delivering world-class infrastructure to the people of the Cayman Islands. Under new system, recycling performance will be improved. Our garbage will become a resource for renewable energy, used instead to generate electricity rather than waste product to be landfilled. Our previous investments in infrastructure have consistently delivered projects such as the district parks, the Easterly Tibbets Highway extension, and the master planned town of Camana Bay. These projects enhance communities, define destinations, and drive sustainable growth. When remediation of the North Mound at the landfill began last year, it had an immediate positive effect on the visual appearance of the site. Once complete, remediation will deliver several real benefits to protect our natural environment and safeguard human health. The new energy recovery and recycling facilities will prevent the majority of our waste from being landfilled in the future while providing renewable energy that supports the country's national energy targets. We expect the construction of these new facilities to create approximately 300 jobs and up to 60 long-term operational maintenance and management of the facility jobs once they're up and running. In order to support the international waste hierarchy, the contract also includes educational facilities and resources to support youth and community understanding of the role that we can all play our part in managing the waste more sustainably. DART has a long-standing commitment to education, especially in science, technology, engineering, maths, STEM as it's known, and these facilities will create new opportunities for learning. Our DART scholars enjoyed a trip to Toronto in 2018 to visit an energy recovery facility and a remediated landfill facility. With these facilities in Cayman, we can introduce the technology to more young people. Together with government, we look forward to keeping the Cayman community updated on project milestones as we move through the EIA permitting and construction processes over the next few years, and to opening Cayman's first energy recovery facility in 2024. As such, I'm proud to announce the new name for the project facilities as ReGen, Cayman's Energy and Recycling Centre. In conclusion, today's milestone is further evidence of DART's continued commitment to the Cayman Islands and creating a more sustainable future for this generation and the next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. We now go to Mr. Peter Ranger, Project Manager for Major Projects Office.
Okay, thanks so much, Donna, and thanks for the panel. So I'll look at my slides now and think the panel's already covered some of the slides, but hopefully what I'm going to try and do is it's quite a complex project and just break it down into its individual pieces. So hopefully people get a better understanding. So first of all, what we want to go through is, what is actually the waste management project itself? As the panel have said, it's a partnership to transform waste management to Cayman Islands, and it's Cayman Islands Government and DART in the country's first triple P. And in essence, it's actually now in two parts. We've got design, build, finance and maintain waste infrastructure. But through the development of the triple P, we've come to the conclusion that some of the facilities can be operated by ourselves. So in fact, the operations that have been previously mentioned will be split between DH, managed by Mr. Sims, and also DART. In terms of the overall project, it's really the ISWMS facilities, as we call them, or sorry, now regen, and a remediation of the existing landfill. So just to start with a bit of background, if you see the images there, basically since the 1970s, Georgetown landfill has been the centre of waste for Cayman Islands, and the trash has been accumulating since that time. If you look at the existing North Mound that has recently been capped, that's currently just over 90 feet above sea level. And as many people have said, and it's been known for generations, we're running out of space. So to put it into perspective, if we continue just traditional landfilling, municipal waste, we've effectively got 5 to 6 years left on that site. If we don't move forward with a new modern facility, then in effect, we need to start looking for other land now. And I'm sure everybody's going to understand that wanting a municipal waste landfill on your back door is not a good idea. So essentially, the current landfilling practices are unsustainable. And what the benefits are going to be is it's going to turn a landfill into a nice green resource and create modern facilities. So it might be a bit difficult to see. The top image there is basically an image of Georgetown landfill pre-Hurricane Ivan. So what you can see is the North Mound, which is in the top right-hand corner. And there's a big black area, which was actually a lake, which was there prior to Ivan. Post-Hurricane Ivan, after the cleanup, what you can see is the lake was drained. That was actually filled with waste. It's about 33 feet deep. And we had a massive expansion of the current Georgetown landfill site. And from that time, government has relied on that site for its centre of waste. But basically, there's not much time left. So just to take you through where we are just now, is that what happened, as Cameron said, towards the end of last year, was government moved ahead to basically get that first capping layer on. The reason for that was basically to control vermin, to actually start the remediation process. And again, on the main landfill mound itself was prevent the need for fires. Where we currently are operationally is main mound 2020. Where DH are currently operating is what we call an area called the haunch. And that's where is the current tipping face. So essentially that work is going on now to the end of April. You see DH up there. When that tipping face is complete, we'll then put that capping layer back on. So we'll then have the whole of what is the existing North Mound covered as first stage of remediation. The next area that will be moved into is what we call the Northwest Extension. So it's quite critical to look at this area. The orange image, so people were worried about why are you expanding the landfill? In essence, we're not, because the area that's notified there was the lake, which was previously filled with Hurricane Ivan waste. So that was a natural area to keep building the landfill until we build the new facilities. So DH will move to that area starting in May. And then the next area of the landfill we're going to be looking at is what we call the legacy waste stockpile. So unfortunately, it was part of that stockpile, which caught fire, which we all know about. And what happened there is, over the past 20 years, government has stockpiled metals, cars, etc., ready for depollution and transportation off island. For various reasons, that didn't happen. So that's now turned into a legacy issue for government. Moving on to the next stage, in terms of remediation. As we said, the new tipping area will be starting in May. And then remediation of the main mound will be following through. And that main mound that we see there in green will be fully remediated by next summer. Following on from that, what's currently going on is the legacy metals and end-of-life vehicles, which are going to be processed and exported. So essentially that contract starts in the next few months, where all that existing legacy waste will actually be worked through, all of the existing cars depolluted, all recoverable material will be recovered and eventually shipped off island for recycling. Again, looking at this image here, the next steps in landfill remediation. So in basic terms, if you look at the waste mound there in grey, what we've done is just put on that first layer, which is really just to keep the waste down before we actually start remediation proper. Following on from that layer will be different grades of fill material, a geotextile membrane, followed by more fill material, and then basically our plant layer, which is topsoil. One of the key parts about the landfill is that is going to be remain active for a long period of time. So there's going to be a landfill gas management system, which is essentially sinking wells around the landfill, bringing it to a collector. And initially, while we build the waste energy plant, that landfill gas will be flared off. Flaring off landfill gas is a lot more environmentally friendly than just allowing it to release to atmosphere. But when the waste energy plant is built and constructed, we'll actually be taking that landfill gas to the waste energy plant, and it'll produce about 0.5 megawatt worth of power for about approximately 10 years. And then the final stage is the future use. So the actual landfill itself will continue to settle over the next 5 to 10 years. So there's going to be some amount of settlement, perhaps up to 10 feet. So the future use will have to be mirror that, if that makes sense. So but the main aim is going to be when everything is closed, capped, remediated, the landfill is finished, there will be public access, etc. So what facilities does the project include? So the Minister listed them out there, but essentially these 9 facilities are going to end up giving us 95% diversion from waste. And we look at the first 5 facilities, they will actually be operated by DART. So that's the energy recovery facility, the bottom ash processing, the C&D waste, residual waste landfill, and end-of-life vehicles. DH will be the operator for the materials recovery facility, as we currently do, the green waste processing, household waste recycling, and medical waste. And I'll go into a bit more detail on these facilities afterwards. But one of the good things as the PPP has gone through over different phases is trying to find something that is actually fit for Cayman, and the natural reuse of DH staff doing what they already do means that there's currently 32 people, Richard, who are employed at the landfill, and they'll be working on these facilities. So the next stages we're going to see is the new tipping area will keep on going from 2021. The main North Mound remediation is going to be complete by 2022. The waste energy plant, if you see that yellow box, is going to be constructed on a new site. The new site, as you can see, is immediately adjacent to Georgetown Landfill. And I'll go into more detail on the waste energy plant afterwards. We'll then construct the residual waste landfill on the existing Georgetown landfill site. So one of the main issues in the past is, where do you put a landfill? So we're going to put the new landfill on top of the old landfill once we move the cars. Now, to get back to the issue of capacity, that area, if it was used for municipal waste, would last about 2 years. So the new tipping area is going to be 3.5 years. That area for municipal waste will be 2 years, but for residual waste, it's 25. So there is still landfilling, but obviously the volume of waste after we've done the 95% diversion is a lot less, and the height of that landfill is a lot lower. So we're going to get, rather than 2 years, an extra 25 years. The next area that we will be constructing is a green waste facility. So initially in the early years, one of the key areas of the waste energy plant is getting the sizing right for 25 years. So you've got to look at waste growth, waste projections, and also your waste streams going through. So in the early years, we'll be taking green waste, chipping it, and putting it into waste energy plant to keep the volumes up. And as years progress, we'll then be moving more towards mulching and composting. But initially, it'll be doing all of those facilities. The next area we see in orange is ancillary, but essentially in that area, we'll have a household waste recycling centre, which will be operated by DEH. And essentially, that will be segregated as it is in other countries for people to be large waste objects, white goods, and anything that they want to drop off. All of those elements will be recycled, and at the same time, there'll be a reuse centre in that place where people can come and drop off stuff for reuse. The other elements of that's in that area as well is the construction and demolition waste. So basically, all the concrete, etc., will be processed through C&D waste to form aggregate. And the C&D waste facility is actually co-located with the bottom ash. So they're very similar operations and actually work together. The next piece of infrastructure that will, all of these facilities will be built at the same time as the waste energy plant. It's a materials reprocessing facility. So that again will be operated by DH. So that's where all the type 2 plastics, cardboard, steel, aluminium tins, etc. will be recycled, again, to be shipped off island. And then another very important facility, probably the most important facility on island, essentially, is the end-of-life vehicles. So essentially what's happened now is the current contract that we have with DART, there's so many vehicles on island, is only keeping up with the influx or the flow into the dump. So once we clear the residual waste area and have a proper end-of-life vehicle facility, we will then end up with no more stockpiles of cars. That makes sense. The other facilities to go in there are a medical waste facility, which will be a new medical waste incinerator, again operated by DH. And finally, one of the things that people often ask about is, if you look at the existing site, and perhaps I should have emphasised this more, the area of the new facilities is the new land that's been purchased for ISWIMS. So all of those facilities are essentially surrounded by the existing Georgetown landfill on 3 sides and are adjacent to the existing residual waste landfill that's going to be built. So all of the access, entrance, etc., is the same as it is coming off Dump Road. So in essence, there won't be much change in terms of traffic, etc. And the final phase is, once we get the waste energy plant up and running, then all waste will be diverted through these facilities to give a 95% diversion. And the final phase will be the remediation of what we call the Northwest Extension. And then that will be fully closed, capped and remediated. So just looking at the energy recovery facility itself, because what's its main function? It's turning trash into electricity. So what's going through waste energy plant will be domestic waste from your black bags, waste oils, the gas from the landfill gas, and yard waste. The plant's going to be built and operated to EU Industrial Emissions Directive standards, which is the highest global standard you can get. And it's got the capacity to generate about 8.5 megawatts renewable energy to the grid. So that's about 7.5% of the island's energy demand, and is going to contribute up to 10% of the energy policy target by 2037. And the main issue is it's long-term and it's sustainable and minimises the need for landfill. So in essence, the way the ISWIMS project works, the current site would give us 5 years. Through the ISWIMS, it gives us effectively 28.5 years. So there are more images around. So this is what we hope to see. Well, not hope to, we will see in 2036. Oh, sorry, 2026. When yes, sorry. That would be the view, a potential from the cruise ships. So if you see there the waste energy plant on the right, that gives you the scale and massing of it. And the Georgetown landfill in its remediated state. So it's a major transformation from what we have now. So as Premier and Minister and Mr. Graham said, this has been a long journey, and we don't want to dwell on the steps, but essentially the project started back in 2014 when the government started consulting with experts to see what the future of waste management will be in the Cayman Islands. Then there was a public consultation in 2015. That ended up with the National Solid Waste Management Policy and the outline business case for what we call ISWIMS, now called Regen. We then moved into the tender process for ISWIMS in 2016, and DART Consortium were awarded a preferred bidder back in 2017. Then from 18 to 19, again, there was technical refinement, and a lot of people say, well, why did it take so long? So probably the reason it took so long was initially we took a UK standard contract and think we could just land it in the Cayman Islands. In effect, obviously it's a single jurisdiction, there's a single stream of waste, and you just can't adopt something that's made for a far bigger jurisdiction. So through that process, we believe we've ended up with a real public-private partnership, particularly with DH running 4 of the 9 facilities and making sure it works for Cayman. 2020, government approved DART to start the landfill remediation by putting that first capping layer on. And we now get through to 2021. So we're now at the contract award stage. As everybody just said, by the end of April, the environmental scoping will be going out for public consultation, and we'll start that environmental impact assessment. And at the same time, the detailed design of facilities will run in tandem. By 2022, the remediation of the North Mine will be complete and construction facilities will continue. By 2023, the legacy site cleanup of the cars will be processed and shipped off island, and residual waste landfill will be built. And by 2024, energy recovery facility will be fully operational and commissioned. So if you look at that timeline, we're talking 10 years from inception, straddling 3 administrations. So unfortunately, with projects like this, which are very complex and run the triple P route, it has to run through successive governments, and that's just really the nature of the project. So we're very proud and glad that we can arrive at this point of actually signing the contract. So on to the next slide. What happens in the sister islands? So essentially, we have to build all the facilities at Georgetown, get everything operational, including a waste energy plant. In the sister islands, all waste management will be DH. Originally, it was looked at putting it through the triple P, but it's far more easier for us to manage all the operations in the sister islands through DH, so that will remain. The solution for sister islands is behind in the fact that it can't commence till the energy facility is actually constructed. At that point, the existing landfills on a Cayman Brac and Little Cayman will be closed, capped, remediated. Any on-island recycling products that could be recycled on island, for example, composting, will be left there. Then all other waste and recyclates will be shipped to Grand Cayman to the regen facilities for processing. So now, how much does this project cost? So this is always the question that people come back to. So the first stage for remediation is currently funded through the Environmental Protection Funding. So that was voted across in 2019. And that's fully funded as a capital works project through the Ministry of Health using the EPF funding. The construction costs of what we currently have there is CI $205 million, which will be financed by DART. And the important piece is there's no cost to government until fully operational. So the question comes up a lot, why don't we do it ourselves? Well, all of the risk transfers to the consortium. So until those facilities are constructed, built, commissioned and handed over, government doesn't pay a dollar. So then we have a 25-year concession period. So once complete, what does government pay? Government pays $163 per tonne for processing that waste. Okay, so to try and put it into perspective, how does that compare with other jurisdictions? Southwark in South London has recently completed a plant, and they are just over £200 per tonne. So in CI, it's probably 220 for processing waste. And how we've managed to get our dollar per tonne down is to look at ways of, for example, using DH, that brought the operations cost down. Look at issues where we currently collect an environmental tax for all imported cars, which eventually goes towards their destruction. So again, things like that will be put towards the project. And then revenue streams are through the electricity and recycling. And it was important in starting off a project that no disposal fees for the public or currently for commercial users, because the government felt that currently nobody pays to use facilities or to go to Georgetown landfill. So to start with, that's where it will be. And there's a commitment obviously for public for no new fees. And the big benefit of this project is at the end of a 25-year concession project, all of the facilities, the land, the assets revert to government. And typically for waste energy plants, they can last up to 40 years. When they're handed over to us, all facilities will have a minimum of 5 years life left in them. So again, the benefits beyond the 25-year concession period continue to grow. And then we end up with why are we building these facilities? So essentially, what we've done from 2016 to now is to actually follow what was set out for National Solid Waste Management Policy, to end up with a long-term sustainable waste management system, improve recycling, turn materials that aren't recycled into electricity to power our homes, and promote moving up the waste hierarchy. So if you see there, reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, dispose. We're currently in the majority disposal and minimal recycling. So that actually works properly, where we actually see the disposal element, we're going to have 95% diversion from landfill. And again, just to close on regen, it's a question that comes up a lot. Everybody says, what's ISWIMS? And it's a really strange name and it's difficult to pronounce. So the project now, this project from today is effectively regen, and the government is very happy to sign with DART and actually move now into the delivery phase. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ranger. We now open the floor to questions. We're going to begin with Norma Connolly from the Compass.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
I have a few questions for you. This has obviously taken 4 years to get to this point since I believe the initial contract was signed as the preferred bidder for the DART group. What was the final sticking point on getting that deal finalised, and sort of what's happened in the interim period most recently to sign the deal today, basically?
Yeah. So just to, I mentioned in the slides there wasn't actually a sticking point. So if I go from the starting point was to take a UK standard form of contract, which is very complex and deals with all the waste streams, and how you actually deal with incentivizing the contractor to recycle, et cetera, But we couldn't actually take that form of contract and just put it into the Cayman Islands, because when you're in the UK, if you don't have sufficient waste to operate your facilities, you can get waste from an adjacent jurisdiction. So it wasn't really a sticking point. It was a continuous honing of the scheme, as it were, and the contract to make sure it fitted here. And that's why it took so long, because a lot of the standard clauses in there just weren't really relevant for us. And within that whole issue, what we also had is looking at better ways of delivering the service. And that's why one of the kind of key elements here is, the involvement through the Ministry of Health, the Minister and DH. We're really fundamental to that. That's a process. And again, we could talk to you for hours. The way the project is going to be managed after delivery. So DH are responsible for all waste management in the Cayman Islands. Through this project, they'll end up still being responsible for all waste management in the Cayman Islands, but 70% of it will be privatized. So that was the real kind of shift. So yes, it took a long time. No disrespect to lawyers in the room, but it takes a long time going through these kind of contracts. But yeah, we've got to where we've got to, and we're really happy to be here.
Thank you. Premier, obviously people are going to ask this question. This deal is being signed just a few weeks before the election. What do you say to people who take that cynical point of view?
Well, I'm very happy we've gotten it all over the line. This project has been 7 years in the making by this administration and my previous one. It was first mooted way back, if any of you can remember that far back, when the Honorable Linford Pearson was minister, ages ago. And it has been the chart of many people, but in particular those who do not support the government. Fix the dump, fix the dump, fix the dump. Well, we're fixing the dump today. Obviously, the elections have been called 6 weeks earlier than had been planned. So there really hasn't been much acceleration in getting to the signature today, because we were looking at a May date, end of May date for the elections initially. So we haven't cut any corners. We haven't made any concessions that otherwise would not have been made. So I think that the country overall, whether they support the government or not, should be incredibly happy that we have finally reached a point where there is a comprehensive, sustainable way of managing Cayman's solid waste issues for at least another quarter of a century. That, I think, is a signal achievement of this administration. I think all of us in this country can take great pride in today's signing.
Next, I'd like to ask, I know the remediation costs are going to be coming out of the Environmental Protection Fund. How much money are we talking about here?
So originally, the what was gazetted was $22.7 million coming out of the EPF. The actual remediation itself is around about 17 million. But what we're doing now is we're putting the funding towards the legacy site cleanup. So in essence, the trouble with the site is there's a huge amount of legacy, obviously going back to the 70s. So the total sum from the EPF is $22.7 million.
My next question is regarding environmental concerns over the actual conversion of waste to energy. Is there going to be an emissions issue with that in any way, or can you just talk us a little bit through what will make that a safe process?
Yep, well, as it was on the slides, it's going to be built to EU emission standards. That makes sense, which is the highest global standard we can actually build to. But also as part of the EIA, we'll be looking at the baseline monitoring of everything surrounding the site. And in essence, this is something that people need to understand is these waste energy plants are actually built in cities in Europe and UK and everything else. So you imagine you're going to build a plant like that in a city of sort of 4, 5, 6 million people. And we're going to build it now on an island with 65,000 people. And where it's getting built, the island's only about a mile wide at best. So government's purpose always at the start was you could actually say that we are over-designing it because to build the EU emission standards actually probably isn't required. But from a human health perspective, government's briefing has always been to make facilities, particularly the waste energy plant, to the top standard we can.
Also, I know you mentioned it was $163 per tonne that government were going to be paying DART to do the work. Is there any other additional fees for the waste to energy work, or is that the only fee the government will be paying?
Yeah, so what happens is, and again, in terms of the costs, what drives the whole project is what's called a financial model, which has all of the CapEx, all of the OpEx, right through the whole life of the project, which is agreed between government and DART, and we both have copies of that, so the whole thing is completely transparent. And the $163 per tonne is the average over the whole 25-year life. So if you look at it just now, that is the highest price that we should pay. So if government wanted to say, well, okay, I want to start charging commercial users, that becomes revenue, which will reduce that value. So that's really our baseline cost. That cost is basically for all the costs of construction, the 25-year operations, and then the cost savings that we got by utilising DH. So again, against the London plant, it's a very good comparator, a very over £200 a tonne. So, but I think I don't want to dwell on it, but everybody keeps on focusing on the price. So it's like we need the waste to energy plant along with the other facilities to get the 95% diversion. And I don't want to be kind of like the cost is the cost. So it's almost like saying, I don't like my water authority bill, but you need to build an RO plant to get clean drinking water. And this is the solution that the government's gone along. And what we've done through the PPP is reduce the cost as much as possible. But essentially, it's not a cost issue. We need to do this, and this is the most sensible and sustainable way of doing it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Just finally, a question for Mr. Sims, just following up on the fire from yesterday. After the last fire, there had been conversations about doing air quality testing following events like this. Did we ever get equipment on island that would allow us to do that? And if we have it, do we have any results from the last fire or from this one on the impact on air quality?
No, we're actually looking at getting the necessary equipment to monitor the air quality for the landfill. So we're in the process of doing that.
That was the answer after the last
Yeah,
fire. So why the delay? Why hasn't it been done yet?
Well, the thing is, we have to research the proper equipment, make sure that we have the right budget to acquire these things. So we just don't want to buy anything to do it. But we're actually looking at that right now. So should be there.
Before the next fire.
Hopefully
not the next fire.
Hopefully it don't happen anymore.
Super. Great, that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Norma. We now move to Wendy from Cayman News Service.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Can I just clarify, just to make sure? I think I got most of it clear about with Norma's questions, but so there was nothing specific that changed this month that was for you to be able to have this miraculous signing 2.5 weeks before the election. There was nothing. It was all on track already.
All
Just
on track.
to clarify.
I'll let Peter answer that.
Yeah, so I shouldn't really say this as I shouldn't say this as a project manager. We're actually behind because originally when we signed in October to do the capping layer, we were predicting February, so we were slightly behind. And as Premier said, at that point it was May. So again, it is, if you look at the process going back from 2015, why wouldn't you sign? Because essentially this shouldn't be a political issue. Hopefully everybody's going to, when they research this and see this, that it's the right solution for the islands. So, and it's going to cross 3 administrations. So hopefully everybody will see the benefits.
Okay, the second thing, CUC, are they going to sign this as well? Do they have to sign it? What's the deal with CUC and when will we see that? Yeah, so CUC, since October, so for the last 6 months, we've almost been in weekly meetings with CUC. And everybody's sort of saying, well, where's CUC? So CUC have been fully supportive of this project since the start. Only as we move towards project agreement signing do we need to fully engage with CUC. So where we currently sit just now is we have a power purchase agreement almost ready and agreed with CUC, and an interconnection agreement, again, agreed with CUC. They then go off to off-reg to check that the details are all okay, and they'll then be implemented. So the deal for the price of the energy, that's going to be between CUC and DART? No, CUC and government. So this is one of the things that if you're in another jurisdiction, the power price and the waste stays with the contractor. But in essence, there's only one off-taker here, which is CUC, and there's only one waste supplier, which is through the government. So the volumes of waste are for the government to deliver, the guaranteed minimum tonnage, and the power price is, again, down to government. But essentially, we've got between now and commissioning to fix that price. And the remit that CUC have is essentially, their remit is they are happy once the due diligence is done for plant to go onto their grid. Their remit as an operator is to not increase the price of power to the public. And right now, as we know, CUC are looking at delivering on their renewables commitment. So ultimately, a price will be agreed between both parties with their overall remit. Does that make sense? So they can use this as their part of that remit, yes, what they have to produce. Okay, cool. I understand that now. Sorry, give me a sec. Okay, so over the last 4 years, what have we done under the headings reduce and reuse, and what will happen differently now with the contract, the reduce, reuse part?
Yeah. That's what you, Richard.
Okay, so what we've been doing, as you know, we have set up recycling stations across the island.
Yeah, I'm not talking about recycling, very specifically reduce, reuse.
Well, there's not been much in that area, to be quite honest with you, other than the recyclables that we've been doing. But once we're up and running in the next couple of years, we should be able to focus a lot on the reduce and reuse. Because we'll have actually facilities, as Peter mentioned in the slides before, where you'll have an actual facility where you can take stuff to be delivered that can be reused. Right.
So like an exchange kind of center where people can go drop stuff off, people can go look, see what's there.
Yes,
and
that's correct.
How will the reduce reuse package fit in with the fact that we have to have a guaranteed amount of rubbish to go in the burner?
All right, so no, they're actually separate. So the guaranteed minimum tonnage is about 80% of the total waste produced on the island. That's really just to protect government. So should there be depopulation, you don't want to be committed to waste stream that you can't deliver. But essentially, those waste streams will be diverted through facilities run by DH. And once we got into the detail of it, not only of being operated by DH in partnership with DART, it then allows the government, so the government's committed to reuse, recycle, etc. It's controlling those facilities, if that makes sense, through the DH. And then it's not up to the kind of whims of the contract, because ultimately what happens is sometimes it's not economic to recycle certain elements, but the government might want to. So we might end up having to pay a partner. Does that make sense? So that is why that part of it is primarily focused through DEH.
Okay, cool. Talking of the DEH's role now in terms of collecting the garbage, what will we be doing within this new package to ensure that people are separating? How is that going to work? Because most people still today just put all their garbage in one bin bag and it goes in the thing. So, will you have to pick it apart, or a DH, or will you have some system now where we're going to have different color bags or different color bins? Or
Well, we're not ruling all of that out just yet, Wendy. But for right now, we're not really focusing. We're not going to be focusing on curbside just yet. We're not saying that it's totally out the door, but because to take on an operation like that, as you mentioned just now, we'd have to educate the public about separations and what are we separating and when the collections of that will be. So we're going to be looking at that, but I'm not going to say to you right now that that's a definite.
okay,
I just want to say, Wendy, that we attempted to put a curbside process in place in a concentrated area, and we ordered equipment, as you've heard, for that. It was a truck that had an arm on it that would actually go around and pick up a certain. We would provide all the bins and everything. This was the initial plan about 2 years ago, and the equipment actually came wrong from the US. It came right armed, came with the equipment on the right side, and it wasn't compatible for Cayman. We needed the one to the left. Apparently, we sent it back, the truck, and Director Sims can give further update on that, but they advised us they don't make the ones on the left side. So that kind of put us back in terms of our curbside project that we had planned.
Yeah, that's correct, Minister. So what we just recently received another truck with some rear lifts. We're going to pilot that or try it, see if that works, and if it does, then we can expand on that later on. So that's why I say I'm very. I'm trying to make sure that we're very reserved about saying what we're going to do later on if this doesn't work, but we have to pilot it first. We have to make sure we do the proper groundwork before we can actually say, yeah, we're definitely going to go forward.
so in this sort of period of time whilst the WTE facility is being built and all the other processing, that's the kind of thing that you'll be piloting and trying different things. So also encompassing in that, will we be returning to the plastic ban that was on the cards until COVID hit?
Well, the plastic ban, the single-use plastics ban was something that I was really gung-ho about, and I was hoping that would have started. The whole government gave us approval to start that process in January 2021. Of course, COVID came. After COVID came, I had some concerns in terms of factories and different facilities around the world shutting down and us not knowing what we would be able to replace plastics with for us to ensure that we had something here to carry items in. That was still not clear. I asked the team to try to get some information. Told me to try to satisfy me that we could go ahead with the January 1st date that we had initially set out, but didn't get the information that I asked for. I wasn't comfortable, and to that I extended it and saying that we would try to revive that in September 2021.
Thank you. In the 9, there's like that little graph where there's 9 things. It says material recovery. Can you explain what that is?
The MRF. So essentially, what Richard's got at the existing Georgetown landfill is basically type 1 and 2 plastics, isn't it?
Yep.
Glass, aluminium cans, and steel cans. So materials reprocessing facilities, any recyclates that can actually be separated, bulked, and shipped and recycled will be processed through that facility. So glass, tin cans,
Oh,
aluminium
so it's a
cans.
sub part of the
Yes,
recycling?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And when's the composting going to start, and how will the green waste, how will that all work? So I think we've been waiting on that.
So essentially, we did look at, and we still got the option to bring in facilities earlier, but it got really complex in terms of how we pay for it and when we pay for it. So currently, we've got a single service commencement date of mid-2024. But we have the ability, because obviously the biggest piece of construction is the waste energy plant, which we've got a year of our EIA in essence, and we've got our construction. So most facilities we're planning to bring on all of it at the same time, because the transition in multiple different areas is going to be quite difficult. But initially what we'll be doing is we'll be doing smaller scale composting, mulching, and a chunk of that green waste actually going into waste energy plant. Yeah.
Okay. Not much more.
And just to say on that, the other thing is that it's kind of strange in terms of waste projects is that although you might think some of these recycle areas are a good idea, you've also got to make sure people are going to use it. So there's no point in producing huge amounts of compost if it's not going to be used. So the transition here is to start bringing things in slowly. Once they're picked up more, then obviously we can expand.
Thank you. The last question I have is just clarification. The issues when you talked about the sister islands, you're saying basically everything has to be done on Grand Cayman first before anything new starts over there.
Yeah.
So they're not going to get anything until any changes till 2024, and that's when it will start.
No. So I probably didn't make myself clear. And so we can't close cap and remediate the landfills until we have a new facility operational. If that makes sense, because the waste will be coming here.
Right.
But in the interim, that is a government-led project now through DH. So we'll be looking at waste transfer stations getting constructed. All of the planning and everything else that needs to go into making sure they're ready will happen in parallel. But we're kind of behind with the sister islands because we can't then take municipal waste and recycle it here for processing till those facilities are built. So it will start in 2022 with the transfer stations. Yeah.
So when will you start bringing waste over from the sister island?
Not for waste energy plant is constructed and built. Yeah.
2024.
Yeah.
So in the interim, things are just going to be normal over there as they are now.
Initially, but again, DH are looking at different schemes. But the main thing that we need to start the construction of is the transfer stations, which is basically DH will process for waste on the sister islands. Stuff, for example, composting can stay there. Other recyclates will be bulked and brought back across. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Sorry about that. Quite long.
Thank you very much, Wendy. We now invite up April Cummings from Radio Cayman.
Afternoon, everyone. The questions I have are actually from the public. The first being, one of the concerns raised is the fact that they believe the idea of waste to energy doesn't really address the consumption component of waste. And so it doesn't really do much to prevent us from bringing more waste into the country. So the question really is, because they think that it fuels consumerism, how do you respond to that?
Well, initially by price. So the government is paying for this. Yeah. So one of the areas where we can get the dollars per ton down is by waste minimization. That makes sense. So I appreciate the point. It doesn't really fuel consumption because ultimately government has to pay for it. So now government is incentivized because it no longer has the ability to essentially landfill. So now it's paying for the service. Government is going to be incentivized to say, well, actually, we can get these costs down by waste minimization. And that is one of the main kind of components.
So the money part.
Yes.
Okay. The other question is about consumers and whether they will benefit from the sale of energy to CUC, whether we see any potential reduction of prices to consumers, anything along that line.
No, because essentially CUC's remit is not to increase, through this project, the price of power to consumers. The power revenue is to reduce the price to government, in effect, because otherwise that would be revenue that is not going to the population. So the two things are actually combined. So the consumers are getting the benefit because the price that government pays is reduced by the power offtake price. Does that make sense?
And the other fluffy question is really, we've watched a lot of people taking part in this process along the past few years. And we've seen you pop up quite a few times. Mr. Andrew, what is it like for you to have been part of this all the way throughout and to see kind of where we are now?
I think it's a great process, and what people don't. So our job really is to deliver these projects for government, in a sustainable, value for money way. That's the whole remit of Public Works and Major Project Office. That's what we're trying to do. So in getting to where we are now is actually a fantastic achievement from the government, because it does take a long time to get there. And sometimes from the project management side, there's a bit of frustration, because what people forget, and it happens a lot, is things keep moving. So people always talk, particularly in the media, about, oh, you told me it was X million dollars. Well, that was 5 years ago. So things keep moving, and the more that time moves, the costs go up, and then your options narrow. So we really are at a tipping point now where, I shouldn't say a tipping point, good word, where we must move on. And I think what I'd like to say is, everybody is being fully engaged in this. DART, the consultants, Minister for Premier, Chief Officer Richard, through the whole process, different than any other project. Everybody just kept on going at it. Took a long time because we knew it had to be done. So it's been really good. Yeah.
And for Mr. Sims, quickly, the scope of your job is looking a little bit different, perhaps, than day one. There's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts. What's this like for you?
For me, it's an honor and a privilege to be part of this historic moment, for the Cayman Islands, where, and we're now going to make useful use of our trash. Before we were, if you think about it, we were burning it, creating hills and a huge mountain. Now we can turn it into useful energy so that all of us can benefit from. And I'm grateful to be part of this process. I can look back at it in years to come when I retire and say that I was part of this. So, and it's as Peter mentioned, all of us have been at it. And from time you get in the office, it's full throttle. Sometimes we're in these negotiations, and the DART team can tell you we're there all day long. In the morning, early morning, I remember during COVID time, especially when everybody was in lockdown. We were in lockdown, but we were still moving. And I can
Microsoft Teams.
Microsoft Teams. We learned a lot about that, and Zoom and all these different things. And so, early mornings, because we some of our lawyers and some of our teams are all in the UK, so you can appreciate the time difference. So we start early, finish late. But it's been a wonderful journey, and I'm really, really excited that we're here now to be part of this historic moment.
Great, thank you very much, April. If we have no further questions, any further comments from the panel before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'd just like to conclude, although I did thank the team or the teams for all their hard work during my my formal statement. I have to say that in my years in government, I've never encountered a more complex project. And I have to confess that I lost heart myself a couple of times along the way. We wound up changing members of the team. It has been incredibly difficult, complex, and frustrating. And I really pay special tribute to Peter. Peter Ranger is a special man.
Yes.
I think lots of people have contributed immensely to this, but without his leadership on this, we just would never have gotten it over the line. And we always complain and criticize, but I really do believe that when there is exceptional performance, that we should acknowledge and recognize it. And I and the government, and I believe the whole country, are indebted to him and the entire teams for the commitment to get this done. And I know, because I can feel these things, when this is going to be one of the, this is going to be looked back upon as one of the most significant milestones in managing our environment and addressing our environmental concerns in time to come. And so I am honored and privileged to be Premier at this historic time, and to have been able to be here to announce finally getting this over the line. Now, there's a whole lot of work still to be done. Anyone who believes that it's all done and dusted, they just sign in line and walk away. There are still a whole lot of other things to be agreed over the course of the next, probably next year, some of which have been alluded to. But this is a critical point and a major milestone along that path.
Trevor McLaughlin, Minister of Environment.
I hate to speak after you, but
Then you shouldn't.
It would be bad if I didn't mention that during the times of doubt, there were many times of doubt when we thought that this project wouldn't happen. And Premier said, Minister, you sure it's going to happen? Let's look at something else. And I want to thank Kieran, who was a part of the team, that after Premier said that, I went and met with him. Kieran Stegan. And I went and met with him to try to figure out how we could continue moving forward with this project. And he gave me the confidence to move forward. And I thank Peter and Richard and Acting Chief Officer Nella Pucci, the team of DART, all the lawyers. This thing is very complex. And, this could have went on forever if they didn't put in the time. Every week they met, and they stuck with it, and I'm so proud that this government is able to do this at this time.
Very much. Thank you to the public and, of course, for the media for joining us for today, and, of course, to all of our panelists for sharing this information on the Regen project. We invite you to join us for our next press briefing, whenever that is. Until then, have a great afternoon and a wonderful weekend.